Hello, everyone. Steve Scott again, and we are going to have another edition of our online training program, education program for the grappling sports, fighting sports, martial arts, and this is called the Kaizen program. And this episode is going to be talking. I'm going to be talking about controlling the position and getting the submission. Now, if you've seen any of my videos on my YouTube channel, or you've trained with me personally, or been to any of my clinics or seminars, or I'm at a training camp or something, you know this is something I preach. It is it's something we do in any type of fighting sport, certainly. And when you look at any type of contest of any type, you want to control the situation, impose your will on your opponent, and dominate them if at all possible. Through hard training, skill, effort, tactics, strategy, and then win. So the idea here is in controlling the position, is controlling all the circumstances and the situations as much as possible, and imposing your will on your opponent, and then eventually working into a situation where you can create the opportunity or be sharp enough if an opportunity arises, pops up by itself, to certainly take advantage of it and get the submission, whether it be. And again, we're talking submissions. If you've seen another one of my videos here on YouTube, when we were talking about transitions, position or to get a submission is also a throw. A good hard throw, slamming an opponent to the ground with control and force, is the same, in my opinion, as a tap out. Whatever the rules dictate of the fighting sport you're in. But certainly in a self-defense situation, if you body slam a guy at a parking lot of a convenience store on the cement, odds are very good if you do it correctly and hard, he will not get up to fight you again. So you might not have to engage in ground fighting or ground and pound or run away, but just call the cops. But that's a self-defense situation. I digress, as I often do, as you've seen my videos before. Anyway, get the position, control the position, and get the submission. Real quickly here, I'm going to, where am I here? There we go. See that? Okay, that is Vital Jiu-Jitsu. Again, a shameless plug for one of my books. I co-authored that with my good friend John Saylor. That came out in about the spring of 2015. We work a lot, we talk a lot about position, controlling the position in that book, and I recommend that you get it. Yeah, I could use the money, we all could, but I'm saying this simply because it's a good tool for you to study. It's a good vehicle to learn these things and have them down. This book, Vital Jiu-Jitsu, we feature 7 specific controlling positions, which I'm going to cover as quickly as I can today in this video. I don't want to blab on too long. But we will discuss those today. Vital Jiu-Jitsu, we talk about them in quite a bit of length, so I suggest you get that book. It will certainly flesh out anything I say in this video. So again, these positions I'm talking about here are more relevant to ground fighting, but they're also quite relevant to standing. But I'll be discussing them as we go on here. I'm going to talk about these seven controlling positions and to get the submission. First of all, let me say a few things here. One time I had a discussion with a rather misguided young man who told me the only way to really get a good submission was to give up any control you had over your opponent. You have to give up control of him or her. In other words, to finish him off to get the submission. And I said, where in the world did you learn that? And he said, well, that's just been taught to me, and it makes so much sense. And I said, how? And he couldn't explain how giving up control of an opponent is tantamount to then going on and making him submit to you, whether it's arm lock, choke, ground and pound, leg lock, whatever it may be, or throwing him, So my premise, the whole premise of this video and the whole premise of what this concept is you must control as many of the positions, as many of the situations as possible, control the position, and this will enable you to get the submission. Now, there are times that it could be a scramble situation where no one's in control, and all of a sudden you quickly take control, either through an opportunity that just popped up, like we talked about before, or where you might have a situation where you control the situation to the degree very instantaneously that you know, get the tap out, whatever it may be. So in that case, you did control a position to get the submission. So anyway, let's without further ado, I want to mention also great advice given to me by Neil Adams, the world judo champion, back in 1993 or so. I had a great conversation with him. I was able to train with him for a short period of time in his gym, his dojo in Coventry, England. And he said to me at that time, I thought it was just very, very great advice. Always try to get behind your opponent. In other words, get his back. Always try to get his back. And the way he put it, always try to get behind your opponent. He said because he doesn't have eyes in the back of his head, and you have much better control. So we're going to be talking about that along this line. But again, I'm always going to try to get behind my opponent. I'm going to try to get in the position where I can control him, to get my hooks in, to get his back, and to position and break him down in such a way, control him in such a way that I will eventually lead him into a position where I can submit him, tap him out. So let's talk about the 7 different positions you will often see. There may be more, but these are kind of what John Saylor and I worked out some time ago, that arise just about any type of fighting sport or even self-defense. The first one is a neutral position. Both of you and your opponent are neutral, facing each other. In a ground fighting situation, you may be on one knee, both knees, squatting, but you're both down, facing each other. You know, you may be, but in any event, you're facing each other. In a standing position, you're standing upright. You know, you may be both have an upright position. One may be bent over, your opponent may be bent over, you may be upright, or vice versa. But in any event, you're facing each other in a neutral position. There are a lot of moves we do that we can gain the control of the opponent from this neutral position. You know, try to get behind him, try to take him down, try to transition from standing to groundwork. You know, some type of a breakdown, you know, a double leg takedown, a go behind, a switch, get behind him. Any way to get behind your opponent or to control him, in other words, or to stamp him down from a neutral position. And again, in my book with John Saylor, Vital Jiu-Jitsu, we cover this fairly extensively, some ways from a neutral position to some situations, some techniques, some skills to get him in a controlling position, to control from that neutral position. So you're really not in a lot of control initially in a neutral position. It's one of the least advantageous positions to be in. So we want to always improve your position. So this is remember this phrase, always try to improve your position. And by doing that, you will always try to dominate and control your opponent. What I've often called when I was coaching just judo for my judo athletes, control judo. Try to control as many of the situations. Often you start neutral. Now it's time to move on beyond neutral. The next one we'll see often is a top ride position, you know, a wrestler's ride, a spiral ride. And if you've seen high school, if you've done any wrestling yourself, you know that what the ride position is. From a wrestler's position, a top spiral ride, getting the back type position. This also definitely is a situation where you want to get your hooks in, get his back. In other words, if you don't want to call it a top ride position, you can say get his back. And from that position, this is what Neil Adams was talking about before, when I mentioned this before, always try to get behind your opponent. Always try to get in a position where he can't see you and you have good control of him. So a top ride, spiral ride, wrestler's ride position, get your hooks in, get his back, is what we want to do. What we call it, what John Saylor named this back in the very early 80s, to my knowledge, first time I ever heard anyone say it, sometime around 1984, 1985, he called this the rodeo ride. Getting behind your opponent, getting your hooks in, getting your legs sunk in his hips, controlling with your upper body, maybe wrist rides, control his shoulders somehow, flattening him out, rolling him. But in other words, getting your hooks in with both your legs and your hands and controlling him from that position. What the Brazilians call the rear mount. Okay, so We always call it the rodeo ride. It works. It's very much like you're riding a horse or riding a bull. You are riding him, and that is an ideal position and controlling position. So that's the second one. First one neutral. Second one top ride, get us back. Okay, that's the second one. The third one is a front ride position. So here's definitely on the ground fighting situation. Your opponent may be down on elbows and knees, hands and knees, flat on his front. You are situated in front of him at the top of his head. He's down. He may, for some erroneous belief, think he can lay there and hide flat on his face. What I always told my judo kids was the chicken judo position, where he's laying flat on his face, thinks he's safe. Or he may be on elbows and knees or parterre. But in any event, you're either kneeling in front of him, squatting in front of him, on one or both knees, you're kneeling or you're squatting in front of him, or you're standing in front of him, kind of a standing type ride position, where you're in front of him. A lot of good grapplers, good judo players will do like a front sankaku or triangle choke from this position. They'll turn him from this position, or any number of things you can do. But he's on elbows and knees or flat, and you are either kneeling or standing or squatting in front of him, directly in front of him. Okay. Also from this position, this top front position, this front ride position, is also two other things. It could be the north-south position, what we also call the north-south. In other words, well, we know what that means, like in the upper four-corner hold or something. You are, in any event, you are at the top of his head. Now, he may be, again, belly down on his side, or even flat on his back in some degree, and you are at the top of him. So you're, in the top north-south position. This top ride, or this front ride, I should say, includes that as well, the north-south position, which also leads to what we call, certainly here at Welcome Mat, the shoulder sit or the head sit. Often, if someone is on flat, my opponent is, and I'm in a front top ride position, front ride, I'm going to start working him where I literally sit on his head. If any of you want to Google watch Dan Gable, some of his wrestling matches. He was notoriously good at doing this, where he would get to the top position and turn his opponent to a degree, literally sit on the guy's head and his shoulder. Okay, we discuss this in Vital Jiu-Jitsu. I discuss this a lot in my book Sambo Encyclopedia, and also Winning on the Mat. I'm a big believer in what I call the shoulder sit position. Often you may take your opponent to a transition from a standing to the ground, or throw him. I have thrown him. Bam, he hits the ground. I immediately am sitting on his head. If you saw, there's a great judo champion named Hosokawa, won the '84 Olympic Games in judo. He often would throw his opponents, often with a very low seoinage, and he would literally just sit on the guy's head, just hover above him, squatting over him in a very menacing, controlling situation. Much like a buzzard or a vulture does on roadkill, just right on him. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. So the shoulder sit or shoulder or head sit position is also the same as a north-south position. It also same as a front ride position. So that's the third controlling position we have. We have neutral. We have the top ride or the wrestler's ride, get us back, and that's the second one. The third one would be the front ride / north-south / shoulder sit, head sit position. They're all in one. They're all in one. They're not separate, really. If you're good at one, you'll be good at the other in this third phase here of this north-south head sit or front ride position. The next one is side control. It's a very strong controlling position. We use it a lot. A lot of you use it. I know you use it a lot. You coach it a lot. But think of any judo hold where you're holding from the side. A Munegatami, chest hold, Yoko Shihogatami, side four-corner hold, Keisagatami, you're still at their side, straddling from the side, Ukigatami, straddle hold, knee on belly, in other words. Knee on belly is a good, that is from a side control position. You just side control. You have taken him down. You've managed to break him down. He is on his back, and you now are at his side in some position, controlling him in some way, either by outright holding him in a time hold or an osaikomi immobilization, or you're just positioned next to his side and you're gaining more and more control. That's where you start. So you're starting your move from the side. So that's why it's called side control. And if you, judo guys especially, if you think, don't just think each individual pin is a separate individual pin. It's not. They often start from some kind of a controlling position, side control, north-south, vertical, like in a mount. We'll talk about that momentarily here. Any number of positions in osaikomi waza, or holding or immobilization positions or techniques in judo, are really controlling positions overall. And we're just holding them for time. Again, I hearken back to Jean Labelle's phrase, time hold, holding them for a period of time and control. So anyway, that's the fourth of the controlling positions, is side control. Very strong. If you watch my YouTubes on my YouTube channel, you'll see a lot of my stuff coming out of side control position. I'm a firm believer in it. In fact, when I taught judo more actively to children, but I still teach it a lot to adults, of course, and I mix that with my Shingitai and then my Sambo. But when I taught strictly judo to kids, one of the first things I taught them, in addition to learning how to fall safely, their ukemi, was munegatami, chest hold, side control. And I taught them thoroughly, and then how to escape it and so on, how to shrimp in and how to pull and guard and things like that. But that was an important thing to learn. So while they're learning their break falls, the kids, they're learning good side control and learning how to pin and control an opponent from that position. So a tip to you coaches, if you work with kids a lot, that's one of the best things. I literally taught my judo from the ground up. I still teach it from the ground up, no matter what it may be. That I believe in teaching these skills from the ground up. That's for another video. So again, I digress. So that was the fourth one. The fifth one is the guard, the top and bottom position guard. Let's examine this. What has become called the guard. I didn't hear this, and I've been around since the mid-'60s, since 1965. I first heard this phrase when the UFC became popular. Now, I've not been exposed to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, so that's why. I was a Judo Sambo Jiu-Jitsu guy, but not Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So I didn't hear the phrase guard until the very early 90s when the UFC came out, and then we were introduced to that. In Judo, it's a very old Judo position. It's not new. Don't get me wrong, this is no slam to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It's a wonderful, great sport in and of itself, and fighting sport. But while the Brazilians really did a lot with the guard in taking it a step further, they didn't invent it. It's old judo. In fact, traditionally it is called, nomenclature, newaza. We know newaza, ground fighting. Newaza actually means to recline or to lay on your back or your side. Waza is technical skill. So you're reclining, you're sitting on your buttocks, you're sitting on your side, on your back. And the original judo, before it became a real international Olympic sport, before there were other influences of wrestling and sambo and all that brought into it in the 1960s, judo ground fighting was very, very heavy into the newaza position, fighting off the buttocks, fighting off the back, the guard. We didn't call it the guard. Fact is, the formal title was newaza no semekata, attacking forms of reclining techniques, attacking forms semekata, attacking forms no of newaza, ground fighting. So attacking forms of ground fighting, newaza no semekata. That was the formal name of it, but we called it newaza, and that's why it was called newaza, and it's still got the popular name for ground fighting, and we call any ground fighting newaza often today, and that's why. So, but again, no slam on BJJ. Please don't write me and email me or do anything like that. I have total respect for them, but they took the newaza another step. Good for them, and so they called it the guard, which gave it a good name. It gave it a simpler name. So that helped a good degree. So the guard position, top and bottom, a little history lesson there. But again, any fighting from this position, this is the fifth position in overall in position control, knowing how to fight in the guard, either top position, bottom position. Okay, it is an aggressive position. It's not always a defensive position. Some people, especially judo people, think it is just a defensive position. It is not. There are a lot of aggressive moves you can do from there. You BJJ guys know, you MMA guys know that as well. It's not one of my favorite positions. I prefer, when I grappled, to get in a top ride position and control, get my hooks in, get from behind, and then turn them over. I like Juji Gatame a lot, cross-body arm lock. I like to get them in the leg press position, which we'll talk about lastly here. But that was my personal preference. Some of you really like to fight out of the guard, either top or bottom. In that case, go for it. It is a strong position, and if you're good at it, you're really good at it. So please, that's one of the very viable positions of fighting. Just again to recap, we have neutral, we have top ride or getting his back, getting your hooks in. That's number 2. Number 3, front ride / north-south / head sit, shoulder sit. Okay, that's number 3. Number 4 is side control. Number 5 is the guard, top and bottom. Number 6 is what has come to be known as the mount. When I first heard this, again, going back to Judo Gene LeBell, I first heard about it from him back in the 60s. He called it the schoolboy or schoolyard sit. In other words, you're sitting on your opponent's chest. If you equate this to judo, which is what Gene LeBell did at the time, he got this from that, it is a variant of the tate shiho gatame. Tate means vertical. Shiho means controlling the 4 corners of the body. Gatame means to lock or control in place. So the vertical pin, the vertical hold. And in a fighting position, as we all know, it is tremendously aggressive. Sitting on your opponent's chest, giving him the ground and pound, controlling him. It is a very dominant, controlling position. So it should be studied, should be practiced, should be used, no matter what grappling or fighting sport you do. Even in something like in Sambo that I pursue or judo, we don't necessarily, we'll get hold down points for it, yes, but we don't get special points for it. I think I don't know BJJ, you guys can correct me, but I think you get special points for getting in that position. There's some submission grappling sports that do that as well, give you extra points for getting in the mount. Good. But if you study the mount position, you can really control. I think there are basically 2 primary ways of controlling it. Sitting low back on the hips, what I call the low mount, that you can also, entwine his legs, grapevine his legs, lower body control from there as well if you just want to hold for time, or just sit on him, or you sit higher up onto the chest in what I call the high mount. A lot of you do this too. I'm certainly not, I didn't make these phrases up. I learned them from somebody else. Don't know who, but I heard them along the line. But you're sitting up higher up on his shoulders, up in the armpit area here, controlling the chest, and you can do a lot of submissions from there. I prefer my guys. We train a lot where we can sit up high on the chest in the high mount, where we can immediately work into some kind of a quick transition. And again, watch my other video on transitions, how I explain it, but also see a lot of transitions we do in our YouTube channel from a high mount. It's a strong position. Like in a holding sense, like in judo or sambo, you can hold them for points, get your points, then immediately transition to a submission technique. Okay, what I found often is from sambo, a really good transition. I found the highest ratio of success for my guys is going into some kind of a bent arm lock, udigarami, arm entanglement. But again, there are other things too. You watch MMA, the mount position, they sit there and they do the ground and pound, and the guy's in trouble. So often they'll roll over, go fetal. Once they do that, you get their back. You've got him in another controlling position. You've got his back. You get your hooks in, you choke him, you head roll, juji, whatever you may do, you work him over. All right. So that's the 6th one, the mount position, or the schoolboy sit, tate, vertical control position, whatever you want to call it. The 7th, and wrapping it up on our position, is the leg press position. And some people just call us the Juji Gatame position. But again, you can do so much more. Envision this. First of all, look at my YouTube videos. We do this a lot, where you roll him over, you get him over, he's on his back, you are seated next to him on your buttocks, your legs are across him, generally both legs, one leg over the torso, the other leg controlling over the head. You've got your arms holding him tightly, and you're trapping him. and controlling him. Now, remember, in what you're doing is pressing him down with your legs, seated next to him. That's why I named this. I never heard anybody else call it the leg press. I'll take credit for it, not in a bragging way. It's just I was the first to call it this, the leg press position. And unfortunately, and very fortunately, a number of people are picking up on that phrase because it is very descriptive. You can do more than just Jujigatami from there. You can lever his arm free to get Jujigatami, yes, but you can also switch to a straddle hold or switch over to a mount. If he turns over and gets away, you can do a head sit, shoulder sit position north south. You are dominating him completely. So you are beating him in a leg press position. It's a very strong controlling position. So it is the 7th controlling position that I would highly recommend training in. Okay. If you understand the different positions, and you may have some of your own, you may say, well, I don't think 7's enough, or you may say 7's too many. That's great. But what we're providing here is a system, a method of training efficiently. And that's why I'm breaking these down in what John and I developed in these 7 controlling positions into, if you have some methodology of what you want to do with your opponent, knowing positions you can get him into to get that submission, then you're going to have a whole lot better success at getting those tap outs or holding him for time and beating him, winning on a, osaikomi in judo or something. So you will be controlling the position and then getting the submission more easily if you have some system of knowing how to defeat your opponent. And I think these 7 positions provide that. Okay, you can train on these, and I would highly recommend drilling on all these positions. You take these, just again, a key to good drill training is look at a real fight, parse it down, and take those parts of that fight and drill on them. Okay, and these positions are parts of that fight. Drill from these positions and how you can get the control. One more thing before we end the video here is that when you are in a controlling position to get the submission, you really have to do 3 primary things. Three primary things. You have to control the position. So control. So let's say I want to get a bent arm lock, udegarami, arm entanglement. Okay, kimura. All right. I want to get this. I have to control the situation, control the position. Even if it's an instantaneous thing, if it's boom, it happens, and I quickly get control and I quickly apply it. What happens? Very instantaneous, or it could take a period of time. I may get him down. I may break him down onto his back, sit on him in a mount position, work up from the low mount on the hips up to the high mount, control him for a period of time, maybe ground and pound if I'm in MMA, or just hold him if I'm in Sambo, let's say, hold him, maybe get my 4 points for my hold down, and then I work into my position and to get his bent arm lock. Okay, so what I'm doing, I'm controlling the position first. So control is the first thing in getting a submission. The second one is trap his arm, trap his body. In other words, trap him in some way. Often, like let's take leg press position. I've got him down. I'm controlling him with a leg press, and I am controlling him. I'm keeping him down. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to, with my arms, quickly hook his arms, or as Anne Maria DeMars calls it, collecting his arms. Okay, I've heard that phrase also in Sambo from some Russian people, but I've always called it trapping his arm. Okay, so I've controlled him. Now I want to trap his arm. I'm going to primarily trap the arm I'm going to lock. Okay, or if I'm, say, going for a choking technique, a strangling technique, I'm going to be trapping his shoulders and head in some degree, or his arms in some degree, where I'm now able to isolate his neck better. Okay, so or if I'm going for a leg lock or a submission, a lower body submission, I'm going to be working, controlling that lower extremity where I can isolate and trap the body part I want to attack. I may be trapping the other body part too. I may be getting his other arm or his other leg. In any event, I'm trapping him after I've controlled him. Okay, so, and then the third thing, in an arm lock sense, we're going to lever or pry the arm free. And a lot of people call it prying the arm free. I did too, until Neil Adams corrected me, rightfully so, 20 some odd years ago, or in 1993. He says, I call it levering, or as he said, lever, because he's British. And levering the arm free, you're levering, you're not just prying it free, you may be snapping it free, you may be wrenching it free, you may be twisting it free, but in some reason you are levering it and creating a lever out of it to get the tap out. So in any event, whether you call it levering or you call it applying the choke, or if it's a choke, or the leg lock, whatever it is, you are now applying the technique. So three elements of control: you're controlling, you're trapping, and you're actually applying the submission technique, whether you call it levering, choking, finishing, whatever you want to call it. You can call it finishing. Think of it very much in the way the Japanese judo people do in throwing. Kazushi, unbalancing, controlling his movement. Sukuri, fitting in, building the technique. Kake, execution of the technique. So in that sense, throwing techniques, grappling techniques have a great deal in common. And also I would add the kime, the focus, the follow through. Make sure you finish them. Okay, so don't just, control, trap, and try to apply. He may get out. Make sure you've got him and keep him down and get the tap out. So anyway, that's a kind of a quick synopsis here on controlling the position, getting the submission. And I would highly recommend you look at some of my YouTube videos on Welcome at Steve Scott, our YouTube channel. We do a lot of that. And so use any of those videos as a good coaching tool, any of the books I've got out, but especially the one Vital Jiu-Jitsu that John and I did in early 2015. We really emphasize it. And in that way, with that book, you can read more and more about it than just be blabbing on here in this video. So anyway, thanks a lot, and I will be seeing you again soon.